Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I am your host, Scott Brady, and I'm here with my co-host, Matt Scott. And I've somehow forgotten how to use all of these controls on this thing. I didn't hit record the first time, and then I just let the music keep playing.
Computers are hard.
I know.
I dislike them.
There's just a few buttons on here, and I can't seem to master any of them.
And that's a lot of buttons.
Yeah.
There's at least
Nine. Oh, no.
So we're talking about the all-new-ish. I can't say all-new. We're talking about the
Mostly new
2022 Nissan Frontier.
Yeah, I mean, it is always good to see companies like Toyota or Nissan, or even like in the background right now, we have the new Ford Bronco behind Matt, and we're seeing this kind of golden age, or I think you summed it up, like the swan song of the internal combustion four-wheel drives.
100%.
And it's almost like every engineer knows that. And it's like the last time to make the great Frontier, or the last time to make what will be now the new Tacoma or the new Tundra that we're going to be seeing here in the next couple weeks in its entirety. The Bronco, all of these vehicles, it's almost like they're all taking it really serious, and we're all benefiting from it.
Well, they have to. Otherwise, the internal combustion engine was just kind of a failure.
Right.
I know people hate hearing that, but I mean, they cannot match the performance of electric cars. And the form factor will drastically change. You no longer will have to, have the design necessity of a large engine and cooling and all of these different things that come along with it. So it'll be really interesting to see where it goes. But, I really do think that a lot of people, love to hate on modern four-wheel drives.
Sure.
But maybe they just haven't driven them.
I think a lot of times that they haven't driven them.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at how most people view the world, is that they've invested a lot in whatever they drive.
Yeah.
Right? So if they're driving like a mid-90s Ford pickup truck, or Ford Ranger from the mid-90s, and they've got 50 grand in the thing, it's going to be really difficult to wrap your head around the fact that the new vehicle from Nissan is going to be better in almost every single way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's difficult. It is difficult for all of us to make a big investment, get really personally vested in something, a brand or a particular model. And it's really hard, especially on the interwebs, to like acknowledge that it's just okay if something's cool.
Well, there's that internet meme,
Yeah.
hard pills to swallow.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that was like my 80 series for me, Oh, it's got the diesel. It's got everything on paper that everybody on the internet says is great.
Well, and Dan Grech has got an article in the next issue of Overland Journal where he does, I think, a very compelling job of making the argument for driving around the world in modern vehicles. And he brings up a bunch of examples, including my own Defender that I have with Marcos. And like, he was here to like hang out. So we go to the coffee shop, and I'm like, so, the brakes don't work. I mean, or the brake lights don't work, and the turn signals don't work.
It's a classic car.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. The people in the dealership, take a Defender to a Land Rover dealership anywhere now.
Other than Land Rover Las Vegas, probably. But that's it.
They're great.
But that's the reality of it, is that he drove essentially a stock TJ around South America with no failures. He tightened up some like shifter linkage that was getting loose, and that was it.
And TJs weren't like
they weren't super reliable.
Yeah.
And then he takes his JK around Africa and essentially has no mechanical failures. So now we have to look at the contrarian view of that. If you do have a failure with a modern vehicle, that's going to become very complicated. So the likelihood of it failing is lower, but if it does, you can't, like Ray Hyland did, where you make a seal from someone's hat, and to like reseal the engine. Like, it's going to be a problem to get a technician and parts and everything in to repair it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We've both put a lot of miles on Jeep products, and I've never had a single issue.
I can't think of a single issue I've ever had with one.
Yeah.
I mean, the JK that I bought in 2009 that ended up becoming the Earth Roamer XVJP that I had, zero issues with that, including all the way down to Panama. Nothing. I mean, I had some problems with the earth roamer parts, but like nothing with the Jeep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just interesting. I mean, I think modern vehicles are, well, I mean, first off, let me preface this by just saying, drive whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Exactly. Just actually get out and do something. Right. Like, don't be somebody that like lives on Instagram and doesn't actually do it, or does it for Instagram.
Do it for the gram.
Do it for the gram. Yeah. But you know, modern vehicles are cheaper to service, cheaper to run. My Gladiator, and I was lucky enough to have the Gladiator and the Diesel 80 at the same time, both relatively similarly equipped, you know, to the proportions of the vehicle. You know, the 80 would get a little bit better gas mileage, but it required oil changes every 3,000 miles with expensive filters, like 74 gallons of diesel oil.
It didn't stop.
Diesel is more. It didn't stop very well, even though it
that was the problem.
It's actually a great car.
Any of the Go.
If you're listening, Kevin, it was a really great car. But
just don't try to stop it quickly.
You know, the Gladiator ran on regular gas.
Right.
Runs on regular gas. It is $29 to get an oil change anywhere. You know, there's Jeep dealers. I have a fly.
You're getting attacked by a fly right now.
Attacked by a fly. It is the monsoon season in Arizona, so there's moisture.
It's the Land Cruiser fly. He's like,
Yeah.
It's like the Land Cruiser gods.
Buy another Land Cruiser. Buy a Troopy. And be
But even
miserable.
then, like a 200 series Land Cruiser is one of the most durable, reliable Land Cruisers ever made, and it's well documented.
Very, very durable.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the 2022 Nissan Frontier today,
We are,
which is based on the 2005 Nissan Frontier.
Loosely.
Sorry, I have to say that.
Yeah, the frame is very similar. There are some changes.
It looks great.
It does.
Of like-minded vehicles, the Ranger, Tacoma, Colorado. I think it's the best looking on the market right now.
I agree. Yeah, it looks great, and I was fortunate to be able to go to their press event and get a chance to drive the vehicle. And one of the upsides, I mean, I shouldn't even say it that way, but due to COVID, you cannot drive with another driver in the vehicle, so they hand you your own truck.
I love when you go to press events and you like say something semi-intelligent and it ends up in like 4 other stories.
I know you cannot disclose your findings.
Yeah.
No matter how much you like them, because a lot of them are
on the
wonderful.
4-wheel drive side. I mean, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but generally when we go to press events, we're probably the more 4-wheel drive oriented people.
Sure.
It's no disrespect. I mean, a lot of these guys are, you know, usually reviewing like Toyota Camrys or something.
Totally.
And there's a larger market for that than there is 4-wheel drives.
And there's always guys that are there like Sean Holman and others that are fantastic drivers and super experienced, and those
Sean's
are the ones.
Awesome.
Yeah, and those are the ones that are fun to. Yeah, and Sean writes for 4-Wheeler and Motor Trend, and he has his own podcast. What's his podcast?
The Truck Show.
The Truck Show.
Sponsored by Nissan.
Oh, there you go.
Back to
Nissan.
Back
to the Nissan. Yeah, exactly. That was a tangent, but that was kind of a fun one though.
Yeah.
So yeah, the new Frontier is notable in a couple ways.
So you drove this.
I did, and they throw us the keys, hop on the road, and you immediately notice the performance. So 310 horsepower V6, 9-speed automatic,
naturally aspirated,
and naturally aspirated. Although we were at altitude in Utah, so you know I hope that the opinions that come out on the drivetrain take into consideration the fact that we were at 6,000 feet or more, which is going to affect how much power you feel that the vehicle has because of the elevation. But given the elevation that we were at, it was a great performer. On the high end of the RPM range, it does get a little rough, kind of like the previous model did. So it's not smooth all the way up to red line, but it's certainly not annoying or even
It's
really.
also not a super expensive vehicle.
Totally.
You know, it's not going to be a sewing machine 911.
Right. But what is the contrary to that? They have done such a good job with attention towards NVH. So noise, vibration, and harshness have all improved. They've got hydraulic dampers. They've got better insulation in the cab. They're using this higher quality glass that reduces the
the laminated glass.
I believe it's in the front and on the side, on the driver and passenger side, which it is very noticeable because I have recently driven the previous edition, and it's night and day. It is much more comfortable.
Yeah.
And you notice it. And plus, with the 9-speed, it just kind of stays in the power band, and all the touch points have improved quality-wise. The seats are nice and comfortable. For a mid-size, value-minded truck, I think it's something you could enjoy driving for decades. So you have that reliability of the previous models, but the technology is there now, the comfort's there now, and definitely the on-road driving performance has improved a lot. So, and there's a couple things that immediately come to mind for me because most of our audience is going to be interested in the Pro 4X. So the Pro 4X, it gets you, a 54-to-1 low range, which in an automatic is more than sufficient. In fact, the low range is so low that the hill descent control is almost not even
needed
a consideration. Even though we'll talk about the hill descent control in a little bit, but so a 5.42-to-1 first gear, which when you compare it to the Tacoma with the 6-speed automatic, and that has 3.6-to-1 first gear. I mean, that's always been my concern with the Tacoma is they didn't gear the transmission correctly. So you have this engine that develops lower torque at lower RPMs, and you combine it with too tall of a first gear. It actually it feels not only uninspiring if you're doing any towing or the vehicle's heavily loaded, it feels dangerous. The fact that the Frontier addresses that with this 5.42-to-1 first gear, I think is a real advantage in my mind. You got a locking rear differential. You have traction control that works when the locker's on, and it works when you're left foot braking, which most manufacturers get that wrong. Toyota gets it right with the A-Track. Land Rover always gets it right, of course. But a lot of the OEMs, when you're left foot braking with an automatic transmission, it cancels the traction control. So it's defeating the purpose. I mean, it's not an advantage to the driver.
Yeah.
And then it's got these Bilstein shocks front and rear with an all-new suspension architecture, and the rear suspension has got these progressive jounces, just like a Timbren does. So cool. You've got these super progressive, tall jounces that they work great. I mean, the Nissan has less suspension travel than the Tacoma. We know that. I mean, it's like in the order of like an inch in the front, which is an infinity in an IFS.
Yeah.
But they have done such a good job of tuning these Bilstein shocks that you don't even notice
Well, there's definitely something to that. I mean, there's the amount of travel, and there's how much you use it, right? So.
Yeah, how you take advantage of it, right? And they did such a great job with that. And then in the rear, they put in these progressive jounces. So even on larger events and G-outs, it's just very progressive. It feels super smooth.
It's a simple solution to to something that a lot of other manufacturers kind of turn to more expensive or more complicated ways.
Yeah, so true.
And you're saying $37,000 for that Pro 4X.
Yeah, which is like, it's a bargain in my mind.
I think so.
I don't think you can buy a 10-year-old Tacoma for $37,000.
I don't know if you can buy a Tacoma for that.
Yeah, I mean, they're just so, even a used one, they're so valuable.
I have so this question when people buy used Tacomas. I'm like,
I think it's because like right now
you can't
even get it
right now.
So you're buying something used. But you're right. I think the financial argument for a few-year-old Tacoma just isn't there. You just wait. You just be patient. Wait.
I mean, what's the starting price of a Gladiator? I think it's $34,900.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that you can buy a $70,000 Gladiator if you're
diesel,
Rubicon, all that stuff. I mean, I think mine was 62.
Yeah.
It was so long ago in the realm of how long I usually keep cars.
I know.
Like,
in fact, I'm always surprised when it shows up. I'm like, oh, he still has that.
I really like it. Like, what else?
It's great.
The only thing I want more than my Gladiator is my Gladiator with a 392.
Yeah. Hint, Jeep. I mean, the diesel though was really nice. Have you driven the diesel one?
I think so. Didn't we have one?
Yeah, we did. I liked it.
I have no memory of this.
But then again, though, you and I have totally different. We are actually in two different planets when it comes to enjoyment of horsepower. So, like, Like, it doesn't mean that I don't enjoy horsepower, but for whatever reason, when it comes to four-wheel drives, I don't even really think about it.
Yeah.
So
See, I like the horse-pars.
yeah.
I just bought a TRX for listeners.
Which is how many horsepowers?
702, baby.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love this car. We'll do a podcast on that later.
I mean, that is.
It has launch control.
Yeah, and that's 3 Tacomas worth of horsepower.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really amazing.
But when you buy desirable cars and you don't keep them for too long, you don't really lose money on them. So you can kind of cycle through things.
You can't drive Bitcoin, man.
You can't drive Bitcoin.
But yeah, you've done really well with cars.
Used cars are up 20% this year.
That's right.
So,
and Bitcoin is down at least that much.
Yeah, it's like the mythical Bitcoin millionaire that everybody knows. It's like an MLM for millennials.
Well, I think a lot of them did make money, but then they didn't sell when they had the opportunity to, and then they just rode it right back down again. Yeah. Although if you bought Bitcoin 10 years ago and you still have it, you're a mini schoolionaire.
Yeah.
But they just don't. Those people just aren't really out there. You read about the guy who had it on his laptop and then he threw his laptop away and he's trying
Or the guy that spent like 700 Bitcoin on a pizza.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Interesting how these all work together, right?
Sure, he's not happy with himself.
Hopefully that pizza was really good. But, when you look at the Frontier, it's always been and this is not even fair to say, but in a way, I think the market has seen it as the also ran.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that it's sold in excellent numbers, 70,000 units
People like them.
regularly in recent years. It won our Value Award for the Overland Journal Midsized Truck of the Year test. It really is, and it's also the most reliable vehicle according to J.D. Power and Associates, which there seems to be on the interweb some confusion around J.D. Power results. So people will say, they bought that J.D. Power award. But I know Nissan doesn't spend money on anything. So, I don't think Nissan paid off J.D. Power to get.
I think they send you like surveys because I think I get J.D. Power surveys, which I throw in the trash.
Yeah, well, so you're not part of that factor.
Like I've seen some of them.
But
like
it's
I remember
because you don't own the car long enough to be able to do the 3-month quality thing, right?
Hey, I mean, maybe I could do the 6 months.
6 months. Well, like you said, you have owned the Gladiator since 2019? 2019.
April.
Yeah.
April 2019. That's when she was born, my little baby.
Forever ago.
My little Gladiator. I love her. Him. Whatever it is, whatever it wants to identify as, that's fine. I don't really care.
Because it's awesome. Yeah, so it's got great reliability, legacy. I mean, you're thinking about the same company that makes the Patrol. I mean, so Nissan does make good quality vehicles. And I think that that's a consideration when you look at a vehicle like this, in my mind.
Yeah.
And you combine that with the fact that it's a great looking truck, a really comfortable truck to drive, plenty of power, which is like, it makes it fun. It makes it where you can tow almost 7,000 pounds, I believe is the rating on it. And when I drove it, I had some takeaways that really stood out. I mean, it's got the best steering feel of any mid-sized truck. So the Ford was really good, but this is even better because it's variable rate and it's electrically assisted. So you get this heavy truck feel, this mechanical heavy truck feel, but then at low speeds, it gets this electric assist, and then it varies the rate based upon speed and a bunch of other things. And as a result, on the trail, you get good feedback and not too much effort. Yeah. And then on the road, you get this very on-center, very direct feel out of the steering. So Nissan nailed it on the steering in my mind. Like we talked about, the NVH, noise, vibration, harshness is way down, so way more comfortable. There was a couple things that I noticed. One of the things that I didn't like is that when you go into manual mode on the transmission, you typically want it, unless it's way outside of range, you want it to stay in the gear that you've selected. Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Like you could be driving very spirited where the transmission shifting could upset the stability of the chassis. And so I was driving in a very spirited manner, and I'm keeping it in third. And
because you're relying on engine braking.
That's right. And I want lots of engine braking, but I also want this like smooth transition through the turn. So like I'm coming into the corner, it's decreasing radius, uphill corner, and I start feeding into the throttle, and I'm at probably 4,200 RPMs now, and it downshifts. It downshifts, and look, because I didn't ask it to, it just downshifted and went to the moon. It went almost to red line. So now I've got nothing left, and it totally upset the vehicle. And so that was one thing that I noticed is when it's a manual selection mode, I get it. Like if you're lugging the thing at 1,200 RPMs, go ahead and downshift. But if someone's already romping along at 4,200 RPMs, don't send it to redline. It had just enough room in the gear to make the downshift, and then it went right into redline, so I'm banging off the rev limiter, and I'd like to see that improved. So that's one, but that's a minor gribble.
Could be pre-production tuning as well.
Yeah, for sure. So that was the only thing that I really noticed on the road stuff. I mean, it's better than the Tacoma in most ways on the road, much quieter, much more responsive.
I think, it's hard to argue against the Tacoma.
Yeah.
It's just that drivetrain.
Yeah, that's it.
Like
literally.
I know that I rag on the Tacoma a lot, 100% because of the drivetrain.
Yeah, and the payload. Yeah. Those are the only two things that I would possibly say.
Well, it's a small truck, but,
Yeah. But I mean, it should be able to. It should be able to have a higher payload than a Jeep Wrangler. The Jeep Wrangler now has a 1,300-pound payload, maybe even 1,395. Yeah. I would think a Tacoma TRD Pro as a truck, should at least be able to carry as much weight as a Jeep Wrangler.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
I have received feedback that I am not kind to the Toyota Tacoma.
Oh,
so I am trying. Thing really sucks, man. I mean, like
we still need. We were talking about getting the Tacoma button, like the easy button.
The Tacoma button, like every time I hit it, I insult the Tacoma. That 3.5 Atkinson, I think this is the biggest case for the Frontier.
Sure.
The 2021 Frontier, the D40, I believe that it's called. It was hard to argue against the utility of it, but it didn't compete, in my opinion. It wasn't a modern offering, right? It was originally launched in 2004.
Yeah.
It ran until 2021 in this market. Like that is, we'll
it's
get
a long
into,
time.
Yeah, we'll get into, so that means that it started to be designed in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it is still sold. I'm just not crazy about that. Oh, well, so I mean, I guess that means that the chassis that this is based on is.
Yeah. It's getting up there.
It's getting up there
but
too.
I mean, like how much do you need to change a
I think there's definitely an argument
for not spending the money on that. Spend the money on the suspension and the tuning and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah.
No, the thing is that we don't hate Tacomas. We just know Toyota can do a little bit better because it's such a great company and they make such great vehicles.
Well, the argument that I will make is that if people with a little bit of a voice or in the media do not push these car companies, you end up with, even though this is a nice option, you end up with this.
Yeah.
Nissan is only spending the money that they have to be competitive in the market, same as Toyota, right? When I was running unsealed 4x4, I drove the D23, which launched in 2014, right? That's a 5-link Frontier. They call it a Navara, basically the same thing. That's a 5-link coil sprung rear end, really balanced, really modern interior. Loved the look of it.
Little
really
diesel.
Cool. I mean, yeah, you can get it with a diesel. They sell it in Mexico, which is the crazy thing. Yeah. But they only have to be as competitive as their closest competition. And you have Ford, who's selling Americans a truck that I want to say has been manufactured since 2011.
Yeah.
Which isn't that bad.
Although they win on that. I mean, that drivetrain is really
great. Yeah, Ford does great things with drivetrain. But Tacoma, they didn't really try that hard, so why would Nissan try very hard?
Yeah.
They don't need to retool that frame.
Yeah.
Because there's really no necessity for it,
Other than, I think that for me, and this is purely personal, it's not a negative about the vehicle because they did such a great job of tuning the rear suspension, but I was fully expecting to see the 5-link because Nissan has always done that. They were the first to come out with the 4-door
Yeah.
pickup. They were the first to come out with, all these little things. They had all these firsts, and I was totally expecting a 5-link.
I mean, I was told by the CEO of Nissan Australia at the time that this vehicle would be in the United States in 2015.
Right.
And maybe it's not because Toyota showed their cards right around that same time.
Sure they did. Yeah.
That's speculation.
But
I know that chassis was designed to be launched in the United States.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if you could offer a better product, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Because the problem that this Frontier is going to have, in my opinion, is it is competitive now. You have a new Ford Ranger coming out. You have an inevitable update to the Tacoma.
Yep. Very soon.
The Tacoma has a lot of advantages, as you're saying. It has more ground clearance, the way it's kind of engineered and designed, everything.
And the aftermarket support.
All they have to do to fix that vehicle is find a little bit more payload,
mm-hmm.
And a different drivetrain, which is super easy.
Yeah.
This is
relatively
easy, right? I think the Tacoma looks good. I think the Frontier looks better. So it's competitive now,
mm-hmm.
but why are they? It would be interesting to be a fly on the wall. Sorry, they're fly. For those that aren't watching us on YouTube,
we're being attacked by a single.
It must be the PR minder from Nissan. Yeah. Maybe it's not actually the Tacoma owners. What was the decision to not bring that here?
Right.
I just think it has to be said. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop talking about it, but it's a really great car. I mean, Mercedes for the X-Class, the only pickup truck Mercedes has ever done, limited production. They only ran it, I think, for 2 years. They used the Nissan chassis.
Yeah.
If that doesn't say something,
yeah.
Nissan would not use a chassis that came out in 2004, or Mercedes would not use a chassis that came out in 2004.
Right.
It wouldn't be competitive.
Yeah, I was just fully expecting Nissan to grab that first and have the 5-link.
Especially with this fantastic exterior. It looks great.
Yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, by the time this podcast goes to air, we'll be past the embargo, but the new Tundra is a 5-link coil sprung rear suspension.
Raptor's gone to it.
Yep.
1500's gone to it from Ram.
The 2500 Ram, you can even get it.
Ram. There are some advantages, I think, to coil springs. Some people on the 3500 Ram prefer the leaf springs, something to do with how it tracks down the road or something. I never really experienced any issues with my 2500.
It handles a wider range of payload.
Yeah.
A coil spring has a narrower operating range, but they ride better to begin with, so you don't need to make them so progressive like you do with a leaf spring. But
it's an interesting. We're at that, to kind of go back to where we were at this, kind of golden age of the, internal combustion, four-wheel drives. There's a lot of stuff on the market right now.
Yeah, really good stuff.
I mean, Chevy's killing it.
Mm-hmm.
With
the little Colorado. I mean,
and
when I drove
GM AT4.
Yeah, when I drove that AEV Bison from the Colorado, that thing was incredible. Little diesel, front and rear lockers, that Multimatic suspension system. I mean, it is class leading. I mean, you just cannot get that combination for what we want in anything else, which is why it won our test. But it's pretty impressive, everything that's going on. And I guess maybe just to kind of wrap up Frontier, off-road, the rear suspension was great. The Bilstein tuning, whoever at Nissan tuned those shocks deserves an award, because I've never seen an out-of-the-box, mid-sized truck that has that
Bilstein,
precise of damping.
It's cool to see Bilstein stepping it up. There's been a lot of emphasis on, it's got Fox shocks. I'm like, cool.
Yeah, I mean, Fox makes great shocks, but it's not just stick a Fox sticker on something and now it's But I think that's what a lot of the manufacturers are doing, is they're not really tuning it. They're just saying we're going to go with Fox, and then the customer's going to be happy.
Yeah.
Whereas what I found with this one, and also this is personal preference too, I prefer a vehicle that has a heavier rebound. And I realized that because of the fact that the Nissan has less suspension travel, that's part of the reason why they have to make the valving a little firmer on rebound so that they still give some compliance on compression, but then the rebound helps control the jounce and the vehicle extending off of an event. And but I did find that I was getting some pretty notable clunking out of the front suspension on like a little bit, not big events. It's like the vehicle wasn't even being pushed hard. It was just loose baby head rocks kind of bouncing up off of rocks and things like that. And I was getting some clanking out of the suspension. So I think this may have been early production, so maybe it didn't have an internal jounce in the shock fitted. But that was one thing that I noticed there. Again, the steering off-road was excellent. The hill descent control was the best I've ever used, even better than the Defender for smoothness. The problem with it is that it's not adjustable. So if you go into manual mode on the transmission and you go from first to second, it doesn't change the threshold. How else do we do it on those vehicles when we want to make it go slower?
I hate hill descent control. I refuse to use it.
Yeah.
It is not very hard to just like put it in a low gear and then like occasionally use the brakes when you start overdriving it.
Well, for me, it's for you and I can see that because I don't use hill descent control typically, but for someone who's maybe new to driving off highway, it would be such a confidence booster because this thing, it's so smooth.
Terrifies me.
Yeah, I know. Letting go of control. Yeah, exactly. Because you're literally like, okay, I'm going to take my foot off the brake as I go off of this precipice, right?
Yeah.
But it was super good, but it isn't adjustable. It isn't driver adjustable. So it's just one speed. You can't change it on the cruise control, nothing. So I'd like to see that.
Taking your foot off the brake and trusting it to Japanese electronics is one thing.
Yeah.
The Land Rover stuff always terrified me. I'm sorry, but like I love the Land Rover people. They're wonderful, but like they haven't had a great track record with electronics. And then
especially with hill descent control,
like,
it regularly went out.
We have a problem with electronics. Let's keep digging the hole that we're in and adding more electronics on top of more electronics that continue to not work.
Yeah, right. Well, and I had a Discovery 1, and it would regularly the hill descent control would stop working.
That was on the D2. That was
on
D2.
the D2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, on the D2.
The little
Did
yellow
I say D1?
button. Yeah.
On the D2. The 2001 Discovery 2 that I had. And then you would get the Three Amigos, and so you could be trusting the hill descent in the middle of a descent, and it would just stop working, which of course was terrifying. So, but the Nissan.
Maybe that's because I'm a Land Rover guy at heart.
Of course we are. We love them. Yeah. Like there's so much about it that, like they get so much right, and then they just miss the mark.
It's just why I don't trust electronics.
Yeah, for sure. We have trust issues with electronics from being Land Rover owners.
Yeah.
Yeah. The crawl ratio is great. The traction
54 to 1?
Yeah, 54 to 1, which is for an automatic is unbelievable.
That's
right?
really good.
The traction control is super smooth. Like you don't even really notice that it's intervening and it's constantly working. And it works with the left foot braking, which is really important.
And now for a quick break from one of our supporters, Onyx Off-Road. If you're driving or riding on dirt this summer, don't leave home without the Onyx Off-Road GPS app. For less than a tank of gas, get access to 550,000 miles of trails and roads and 985 million acres of public land for camping, fishing, exploring, and all of your outdoor adventures. Onyx Off-Road maps are fully interactive, meaning you can tap anywhere on the map for detailed information. Check out featured trails for trail descriptions, photos, difficulty ratings, and more. Your maps will even work without cell coverage, so you never have to worry about getting lost. Go to onyxoffroad.com and use the code OJ at checkout for 20% off right now. Thanks, Onyx.
It does feel like the suspension's locked down, but I think that's because it doesn't have a lot of travel. So they really did what they could to manage that, but you really only notice it like higher speed, gravel road, corrugations. It tries to step out a little bit.
Well, that's where that older chassis is, we fit larger tires to vehicles now. We
Sure.
expect more suspension travel. We expect more out of vehicles in 2021 than we did in 2004.
Well, and again, that Bronco that's just right behind you there, what does that have in the rear?
Lots.
Coilovers.
It's got
coilovers.
it's basically
right?
got a 6100, spec trophy design, kind of with this big trailing arm and like this coilover.
It's amazing.
That goes.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's pretty awesome.
I like it.
And then I think that a couple little downsides. I did notice the clunk. The suspension is locked down a little bit. The rear locker switch position is like totally in the wrong spot. And, the people that were there, of course, the Nissan people they're truly wonderful. Like they're one of the nicest groups that you deal with. And they're like, yeah, we know. It was so far, like when the steering wheel locks off road, not the steering wheel, the seatbelt locks off road, you cannot reach the locker button. So you're like bouncing up.
Where is it?
It's way down, like by your ankle. It's as far away as you could possibly put it from the driver.
Oh.
On the left side of the dash.
Oh, so it's like
down where you'd put the parking brake thing,
like
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reach.
You can't get it. You can't get to the locker button. So if you're kind of like bouncing up a trail and you're like, oh, this is getting a little rowdy, and you want to lock the rear diff, you can't actually reach the rear diff without stopping, which of course is a big problem, or removing your seatbelt. So anyways, I went with the remove the seatbelt option as opposed to stopping.
Naughty boy.
Yeah. So, but it's an easy thing for them to fix, but it is worth noting since we like to include the full spectrum of what we liked and didn't like. So
4-wheel disc brakes too. What else has that in this segment?
The Colorado does.
Colorado.
The Ranger does. Well, only the Tacoma has. The Tacoma may be the only remaining.
Well, I mean, the
passenger
Tacoma's
vehicle
with the
drum
oldest
brakes.
in the segment, right? Or would Colorado have come out slightly before that?
Yeah, they were pretty contemporary to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Tacoma may be the only remaining passenger vehicle.
Well, it's
with drum
interesting.
brakes in
It's
the rear.
interesting that the segment is heating up.
Yeah,
Right.
I love it.
That's going to be good, for everyone. I think it's important to. I don't want to say, call out things that they could have tried harder on, but you kind of have to.
Yeah, we've got to be able to share our full experience, but I really like would I drive that truck, the Nissan Frontier, every day? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
It looks great.
I think it looks great. The only negative that I can find that's a glaring negative is that there's not a lot of aftermarket support for Nissan. And if there's anything that overlanders like to do, it's to
maybe that is
fidget with our gear, right?
the diamond in the rough with the fact that it's very similar to previous vehicles. I mean, it's the same chassis.
Yeah. I don't know if the suspension is that much the same, but
Yeah.
But the truck also doesn't need much. I think it would benefit from a little bit of a lift. It's lower than the Tacoma by a little bit, especially at the quarter panels. You can really tell the difference. I mean, Tacomas look lifted from the factory. They look tall, like if you get a TRD. But, I mean, Nissan's going to kill it with this thing. It's going to be really popular for them. I think it's a great truck. I think people should take a look at it, at least go drive it, because it drives really nice.
Yeah.
And then hopefully the aftermarket responds. It's 70,000 units a year. That's a lot of trucks. So it seems like that there's a benefit to having some aftermarket support of it.
Yeah. I don't know.
And then I guess I'm moving on to the mid-sized truck segment as a whole. I mean, we've got Colorado, we've got Canyon, they're very, very similar vehicles. We've got the Gladiator, we've got the Ford Ranger, we've got the Tacoma, and then we've got the Nissan.
There's the Gladiator and then a bunch of other stuff.
Okay, so I'll bite. So tell me what you believe makes the Gladiator the superior choice in the segment.
It's designed to go off-road, not to deliver parts at Napa.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It is the only vehicle on the market where its primary purpose, the only vehicle in that segment where its primary focus and purpose is off-road first.
Mm-hmm. It's designed that way.
So 37s, factory lift.
Yeah.
Shall we move on?
Well, and there's even more. If you think about it, you can get a diesel.
Yep.
Which you can't get the diesel in the Bison anymore, I believe, which is sad.
Inevitably, we're going to get that Recon. I think it's the Recon package that's on the Wranglers right now. That was kind of a response to Bronco. That gives you, at least on the Wrangler, gives you 456 gearing.
Yep.
And that gives you 35-inch tires.
Yep.
Available steel bumpers front and rear, winch capable front bumper from the factory rock sliders. And with all of that, still has some of the best payload in the segment.
Yeah.
If you took a Ford Ranger, which has also very good payload, and you added steel bumpers front and rear, rock sliders, skid plates.
Yeah, you don't have much left.
You don't have locking differentials, all that kind of stuff. It's more money to purchase up front, but you're getting something with a factory warranty.
Yeah. And if you get the Sport with the max tow package,
1,600 pounds.
You can get 1,600 pounds of payload. Which,
I think it's 1,700 pounds, actually.
Yeah.
I think they updated it. It was 1,600 pounds at launch, and then they...
With the manual transmission, you get 1,700.
Okay.
Which is awesome. Well, maybe you can't get the... There's some configuration that you can do that gets you to 1,700 pounds. It's some like obscure... And that's another thing. You can get a manual transmission in the Gladiator, which... You can only get in the Tacoma. Otherwise, I believe that's the only other option for a manual.
So.
Tacoma and Gladiator, which, I mean, like hats off to Jeep and Toyota for at least giving us the option of having a manual. Like I think that for me, I would be very tempted to go buy a manual transmission Tacoma because it's like they're just going to not be. You just won't be able to get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those cars will just be gone. Or like the base Sport Gladiator with a manual and then just add a few things that I want to add to it. But I mean, the Gladiator that I drove with that diesel, I drove it out to New Mexico, all off-road on the way there. Yeah. And then I got a U-Haul trailer, double axle trailer, and I put the AEV Brute of Mike McMod's on there with a diesel in it. And I pulled it all the way back.
Did it pull it brutishly?
It pulled it great, except for, and Jeep has to be aware of this, but like it has some cooling trouble. Like it has some cooling difficulties.
Yeah, I could see that though. I mean, it doesn't have a wide grill.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a lot of ways to shed that heat.
Yeah.
Part of the form factor.
Yeah, if you're pulling 6,000-7,000 pounds with it, I think it's really pushing it. Like if you're pulling a 3,000 pound boat or a 4,000 pound or a 3,000 pound off-road trailer or whatever, it's going to be great. Or camper or something like that, I think it'll be great. But it does struggle with the heat a little bit. So you make a great point on the Gladiator. I mean, it's literally so purposely made for around the world travel out of the box.
I mean, I'm biased, but I paid full retail for mine. Like I didn't get a deal from FCA or something. It's just that I happen to be really enthusiastic about that product.
Yeah.
I've taken mine all over the country and it's been flawless. So,
and you make a good point about 37s. What else can you put 37s on with very little modifications? Nothing.
Drives like stock.
Yeah.
Like you can even write 37s and you're gearing into the factory traction control and PCM. Like,
wow.
Now we have two flies. Jeez, now it's
I think
Nissan,
it's your shirt.
It's Nissan and Tacoma owners trying to kill me.
It's the flowers on your shirt, man. They're attracted.
They're attracted to my manliness.
To ginger.
I'm not ginger.
I think we should poll our audience. We should do that on like when we do our first Ask Me Anything, which will be very soon, by the way. Those of you who are listening, please send any questions that you've got about anything, including Matt's hair color. And we'll talk about it on the AMA because I think we should.
Not ginger. I think that the ZR2 and the AT4, why are they separate companies? I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, is GM supposed to be more premium than
GMC is supposed to be more premium. Yeah.
Sounds.
That's why they have like the Denali and then.
Sounds like something that will go away the next time they go bankrupt.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean,
Not that I'm singling them out. They've all gone bankrupt.
Yeah, except for Ford, I think.
Yeah, I think except for Ford.
I mean, I know Toyota hasn't gone bankrupt.
Yeah, because they're still selling us drum brakes.
Yes,
they've amortized the development cost over.
It shows how little we know, right?
Yeah, let's take the motor from this minivan.
Toyota's got it figured out, right? They know how to stay profitable.
But it is so hard to argue against the Tacoma. I know I kind of rag on it. I rag on it because I've seen what Toyota is capable of.
Yeah.
They just kind of consistently, by choice, seem to lag behind in the marketplace. That's what I have a little bit of an issue with. And that's what I'll take issue with Nissan on this is, again, like the D23 is a wonderful chassis. I don't know.
And it's such a competitive marketplace. I mean, 5 years ago, it was the Tacoma and the Nissan.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yep.
There were
they only had to compete with each other, and
That's
then you
right.
started seeing the U.S. companies come in.
That's right.
You know, there's been a lot of rumors about a mid-sized Ram coming out. That'll be interesting to see what Stellantis.
Yeah.
I hate that name.
Yeah,
that
was
so
an
much.
interesting one.
Like I could get behind FCA because it's like Fiat, Chrysler, automobiles.
Yeah.
But now like Peugeot?
It sounds like synergy, which
Like,
is
why even change it? Like, Peugeot is never going to sell a single vehicle here. Like, Fiat, I think, has sold like 5.
yeah,
Like,
not very many.
I mean, Chris Cortez bought a Fiat.
Yeah,
think
I
it
still
broke,
don't know.
like-
I still don't know how he
How
fit
he
in that.
fit?
How he fit in that car.
I remember the first press car I got. Scott Brown sent me like a Fiat 500 ragtop convertible, and me and Charlie were in it. It was like pearl white with a red interior. It was,
You've had some interesting experiences in Fiats, like coming back from Outdoor Retailer with Brian McVickers.
the rental.
Yeah, you were in a rental Fiat 500 and nearly died from a deer impact.
I just remember, like,
Screaming. I heard
this is the last car you want to be in. Is a Fiat 500
hitting
a deer
hitting anything
in Flagstaff.
Yeah, exactly.
But surprisingly, like, the rental car company didn't even know.
Well, and didn't it have just like slobber all the way over the roof?
And it had like a little chunk of hair. I mean, the deer like was probably shaken up. Like, you know, it was just gone. Like there was nothing we could do. It was like 2 a.m. in Flagstaff. Like we had just made it through the res without getting hit, and then all this we're like, you know, 12 Red Bulls deep for after Easter Jeep Safari, and then this thing goes like, it's on my side. What else?
I just remember Brian telling the story about him screaming, which woke you up because you were sleeping, and then you just started into screaming, and you didn't even know what had happened.
This is what we're doing now. Okay. Okay, so Ford Ranger, you have more experience with that than I do.
Yeah, we had a long-term loaner from ARB, their blue one.
Looked really great.
It did look really great, and it worked really great. I like the fact that it's very compact. It's like the smallest of all of the trucks.
But it feels a little bit bigger inside.
Yeah, maybe.
I thought.
Yeah, maybe. I hadn't thought of it in that way, but Ford with their like turbocharged anything with a 10-speed attached to it.
So good.
Yeah, I mean
that's where Jeep needs to be careful.
Yeah.
Is Ford drivelines.
Yeah.
They are the best.
Well, let's go from the top. You go get a Tremor.
Yeah.
With rear locker, front limited slip.
Over 1,000 pound-feet of torque and a 10-speed.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it's literally the most powerful thing I've ever driven. Like, not the fastest, but it was it was so unbelievable. You felt like you were literally ripping the asphalt off the earth.
Yeah.
It was like, you wonder, how do they keep tires on this thing? I mean, the only thing that works is traction control, right? I mean, it makes so much power. And then this Bronco we've been driving totally rips.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely is faster than a Wrangler.
100%.
Probably not faster than a Wrangler 392.
No chance.
But
310 horsepower versus 470.
Yeah, sure, exactly. But it feels great.
Yeah.
With the turbo and the 10-speed, and it just moves it around. It's really fun, super fun to drive.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, okay. So what's your ranking? Top to bottom.
Well, I guess we got to real quick the Bison is still available, which is really important.
Oh yeah.
So the suspension on the ZR2, in my opinion, is the best suspension on any of them because of that Multimatic. It's just excellent.
The Multimatic stuff is like it's no joke.
Yeah.
I mean, my argument against it has always been that really great shocks. What's the first thing that people do to a 4-wheel drive?
Yeah, they change the shocks out.
They change the shocks and the suspension and yada yada, and okay, boom, there you go. But I mean, this is what that's the suspension that they use on the Ford GT.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Multimatic builds the Ford GT in Canada, not an American-made car, by the way. It is the suspension on Ferrari Challenge cars. Yeah. Like, it's serious.
And it seems like the only people who kind of rip on the suspension just don't think about how they don't drive it in a way that maximizes the way that it works. And it doesn't mean that you have to drive it fast. It just means understand the capability of the suspension and then let it work. Mm-hmm. And it's great. And I think that we're going to keep seeing GM respond in that way. I think they're going to keep.
I love their new facelift. I mean,
front locker. That's another thing to think about.
I would love to spend more time in that vehicle.
Yeah. We need to get another one in for some more testing, I think. But it's the only other option other than the Gladiator with a front locker. So
and a diesel engine. It is actually, it's like somebody was listening and they're like, what do you want in a 4-wheel drive? Okay, so you want front and rear lockers. Okay, cool. You want crazy suspension. Okay, cool. You want wider fenders like the Raptor, but on a smaller truck. Okay, cool.
Boron steel skid plates.
Yeah, and then they
bumpers.
do the AEV treatment to it.
Exactly.
It's good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Raquel has one.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she loves it. She loves it.
Oh, that's cool. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, because Raquel is awesome. We're talking about Raquel from X Overland, by the way. Yeah. Amazing human being. So yeah, my ranking. This is interesting. You're putting me on the spot here. I think this is important though to think about. I would say that. So, is this like what I would buy and drive right now, or what I would buy and drive around the world?
Well, we are about overlanding. So, which one would you put your pith helmet on?
Yeah.
And drive around the world tomorrow?
I would be really tempted to go with the diesel Gladiator. I think that or the Max Tow Package Sport Gladiator, because I like the fact that the vehicle has so much capability. So I would be inclined to making that first, because unfortunately, when it comes to Toyota reliability, the Tacoma is not the class leader anymore on reliability. So I wouldn't buy it for that reason. I do really like the Tacoma, but I would take the Gladiator or the Bison, either one of those two.
Yeah, I think the Gladiator.
But the Gladiator has more payload. So like the Bison just needs that extra 200-300 pounds. But the Gladiator would probably be number one for me, or the Bison.
Where would the Frontier land?
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm trying to make a point on, is that it is now the newest vehicle in the segment.
Yeah.
But is it even competitive at the top?
You know what I think I would want to do with the Nissan? I think it would be a great exercise in a great tool for the job, and you just leave with it stock. Maybe you put a little, like an AT Overland Habitat or something on the top of it, and you just go. Like, you buy the truck, you put the little Habitat, whatever you want on it, go fast, take your pick, right? And then you drive away, and you never Instagram a thing. You become like you just go enjoy an adventure on a vehicle that will most certainly bring you all the way around the world and back again for $37,000 plus how much is a Habitat?
Let's call them 10 with some options.
Okay, so you're at 47,000. Let's just run through the math real quick. You're at 47 grand with the Habitat. You don't do any other modifications to it because it doesn't need it. And then if you look at a $70,000 Gladiator, you would have enough money to buy the truck, put on the Habitat, and drive around the world for less than it would cost to buy the Gladiator. So, like, to me, it always comes back to like just being open and honest about the influence that our ego has on our decisions. Like, like if we just want to travel, then why don't we get the most reliable one? Nissans are sold everywhere in the world,
Except that this is a U.S. only model.
Yeah, but like you can go into a Nissan dealership and like they could probably send some parts or whatever. Yeah, exactly. And not that I'm making the argument in that perspective, but it is a global brand. And then just make it about the trip. Whereas like that little, like, I want to do the Camel Trophy Sabah Malaysia thing. I want the Gladiator. I want this like
that reserve capability.
I want that capability and that like adventurous projection out into the world of like, I am adventuring now, as opposed to a delivery truck, But the reality is that we should probably get the Nissan and spend the extra 30 grand going around the world, right?
I think it's really attractive.
Yeah.
I think it's.
So what would be your?
I would totally take a Tacoma.
I didn't even say.
Yeah, I'd take a Tacoma. I'd put like 37s and long travel on it, and I'd spend like 150 grand, and
perfect.
Do the Mojave Road. Sorry, it's just too easy. It's too easy. No, I mean, yeah, I would drive what I would want to drive.
Yeah,
and
you've already got it,
and I've got it.
It's parked right here in the.
I think.
Although we should probably, I mean, what was the most recent modification that you did your Gladiator, and how did that turn out? Are you ready to talk about this?
Let's see how it pans out. But I decided to do a Magnuson supercharger, and currently, my car drives like a bucking bronco.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, because the kit's not designed for heavier vehicles than stock, and vehicles with altered gearing or larger diameter tires.
So, which is every Jeep in the world.
So
how much have we learned about like trying to modify these cars? Like unless it's totally.
How many times have I pontificated about leaving the driveline stock, and then I mess with it and I get bit?
Yeah.
So, I think what's interesting with my particular Gladiator is it has a lot of firsts on it. So there's not many long-range tanks. There's not many that are supercharged. It had the first AT Habitat kind of camper.
Yeah.
Or I have a Summit, not a Habitat. I always mix them up. But
yours goes instead of.
Yeah, and I just put the new AEV suspension on it. So
nice.
Really,
good choice.
And an AEV snorkel. I mean, now that the AEV stuff is available, it's just like send it to AEV.
Yes.
Because it works.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah.
Now we're getting close to the end of the podcast, and we have not been totally fair to the Tacoma. And again, I think it's just because Matt and I love Toyota vehicles, and we've driven them around the world. And but the Tacoma is no question one of the most capable off-road.
Yes.
It has the most aftermarket support. And
I'm gonna argue on that.
You think that the Gladiator has more?
For sure. Half of it's a Wrangler.
I wonder what the Gladiator would have that you couldn't get for the Tacoma.
This is a few year old data, but in terms of aftermarket spend, according to SEMA, Wrangler first, Mustang second, and then I don't know where the Tacoma falls in that, but
yeah.
There's only so many different varieties of UCAs that you can do.
Well, and maybe that's it. You can get anything you want for a Tacoma.
Yeah.
Maybe not as many different options as what you could find with a Gladiator, but all of the aftermarket support that you would want, you can get with that. There's a huge community of owners that can help you.
Yeah, great community.
Make decisions on what to buy. The vehicle's very confidence-inspiring off-road. It does have that Toyota heritage of reliability. And I think that there's just something very familiar about buying a vehicle like a Tacoma, and it's also a pretty good financial decision. I mean, I don't know if the Gladiator has a higher resale value, but like if you go to try to buy a 2-year-old Tacoma, you basically spend what you bought for what you would spend on a new one.
Well,
so the resale value alone makes it a great argument.
This is an area that I have some knowledge in because I'm always buying and selling cars. It's a hobby. Like I work in the auto industry during the day, and I play around with cars and stuff at night in my garage. I mean, what else have we been doing during COVID? very fortunate to be able to do that, I guess I should say. But Toyotas have and always have sold for sticker. Mm-hmm. If you get $500 off on a Toyota, you're doing good.
Yeah.
You can go and get at a certain point, you could go and get $5,000-$6,000 off of a Gladiator. That was never the case with Wranglers. Wranglers were like Toyotas. Wranglers sold for what they sold for. That's why they've always had stellar residual values. But they're chasing the volume game. So I don't know if that's true anymore. I don't think that the resale value of the Gladiator is poor.
No, I wouldn't say so at all.
And I don't think it's poor. I think that you maybe don't, you can really option these things up, and I don't know if you see all of the value back on those options. Financially, buying a new Tacoma is,
yeah.
Like I had a Toyota 4Runner, which I really liked it. There's things I didn't like about it. I didn't like the gas mileage. I did a really modest lift and a really modest tire size. You could kind of tell it was modified if you looked at it. And with the roof tent, I was getting like 10 or 11 miles to the gallon.
Yeah,
that's what my Earth Roamer gets.
Right.
So again, it's like, it's not that I'm criticizing the vehicle. I'm criticizing Toyota, and I'm just saying do better.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think that the previous generation Tacoma I liked more.
Oh yeah, for
than
sure.
The current generation Tacoma, I liked the 4-liter more. I want to say you still had a 6-speed, or you had the 5-speed that was in the, because they shared the 4Runner drivetrain. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. My first big project was a 2004 Tacoma TRD, and I drove it all over the place, grossly overloaded, which I learned a lot from, but the vehicle never failed.
Yeah.
And it went from Tuktoyaktuk all the way to the Darien Gap. That truck was really, really robust. And I think if I could swing a magic wand and somehow tell Toyota what I would love to see with the next Tacoma, I would love to see the 5-link coil sprung rear suspension we're going to see in the Tundra. I'd love to see that in there. I would love to see an 8 or 10-speed transmission with a 5.5 to 1 minimum first gear.
Yeah.
Give us some really low gearing, because once these trucks start to get loaded up, they need that mechanical advantage. And I can't imagine that they're going to go with the same engine again. There's going to probably be something hybrid or something turbocharged or whatever.
They're gonna have to.
Which I think will be great. Toyota will build something great.
When the mid-cycle refresh of that vehicle comes out, it will likely, I will likely change my opinion on it based on what happens, right?
Yeah.
But make no mistake, Toyota is selling you a minivan engine with the same frame from the previous generation, the same greenhouse from the previous generation, the same rear axle with drum brakes, because they can, not because they're offering value. Right. And we're now in this market segment where you have the ZR2, you have the Colorado, you have the Ranger, you have the Gladiator, and brand loyalty, which we both have to Toyota. If I'm going to do a serious trip around the world, you get a Toyota.
Yeah.
You get a 70.
Yeah.
You get a 200. It's not really a question. They're great, but they can do better.
Yeah.
And if nobody says do better, they're not going to.
Yeah. It's literally just because we care. It's and that sounds kind of cheesy, but it's literally because I've entrusted my life to Toyota products and literally trusted my life to them. And I want to see them reach their full potential with the mid-size
When you're in the
truck.
Skeleton Coast, what do you take?
Yeah, that's right. You take a Land Cruiser.
Mm-hmm. Anyways.
Well, on that.
2022 Nissan Frontier and the mid-size truck recap.
Take care, guys. Yeah. Talk to you next time.